Welcome to Moonmine Temple. Tonight, we journey together into peaceful rest. Your mind has been busy, hasn't it? Thoughts flowing like a gentle stream that never seems to slow. Perhaps someone's words are still echoing softly in your awareness. Or you find yourself wondering, gently wondering, about things that have already passed. Tonight, we'll learn the ancient art of letting your mind settle. Like watching snow fall on a quiet winter evening. Soft, natural, peaceful. Close your eyes and feel your body melting into this moment. Notice how your breath moves in and out, like gentle waves on a calm shore. This natural rhythm is your first teacher tonight. It knows how to flow without effort, how to release without losing anything precious. In the quiet mountains of ancient China, there lived a wise teacher named Yunmen. One peaceful afternoon, a young student came to him. The student's heart was heavy with thoughts about his family far away. "Teacher," the student said softly, "my mind feels like a bird that cannot land. I think of my mother's gentle face, wonder about my brother's well-being, imagine conversations that may never happen. How can I find the peace that you speak of?" Yunmen looked up at the vast blue sky and spoke one word: clouds. The student followed his teacher's gaze upward. White clouds drifted slowly across the endless blue, like thoughts floating through awareness. "Watch them," Yunmen whispered. "See how they move, without struggle. The sky doesn't push them away or pull them close. It simply holds them with infinite gentleness as they pass." "Your thoughts," he continued, "are like these clouds. Your awareness is like this vast, peaceful sky. Let them drift. Let them float. Let them pass like whispers on the wind." Feel this truth settling into your body now. You are not your thoughts. You are the gentle awareness that watches them come and go. Like sitting by a window, watching clouds drift across a summer sky. When you find yourself thinking of someone again and again, you're like a person watching the same cloud, following it with your eyes as it moves across the horizon. But what if you could simply rest in the vast sky of your awareness? What if you could let that cloud drift on while you remain peacefully still? Breathe in this understanding. Breathe out any need to chase your thoughts. In our busy world, we sometimes create stories about others without realizing it. Like children making up fairy tales, we imagine what someone is thinking, feeling, or doing. But these are just gentle imaginings, not reality. If a friend seems distant one day, your mind might whisper, "Perhaps they're upset with me." But what if they're simply tired? What if they're caring for someone who needs them? What if they're lost in their own quiet thoughts, just as you sometimes are? The Buddha taught us something beautiful. Our suffering often comes not from what happens, but from the stories we tell ourselves about what happens. Like mistaking shadows for monsters in the dim light of evening. When someone doesn't respond to your message right away, that's simply what happened. No more, no less. Like a leaf falling from a tree, just a natural moment in time. The story your mind creates about what it means, that's where the heaviness comes from. But tonight, you can let those stories drift away like dandelion seeds on a gentle breeze. You don't need to carry them anymore. Here's a comforting truth. Most of what others do has very little to do with you. This isn't meant to make you feel small. It's meant to make you feel free. Free from the exhausting work of trying to understand everyone's every action. Imagine walking through a peaceful garden, so absorbed in the beauty around you that you don't notice an old friend sitting on a distant bench. You walk past without seeing them. They might think, "How strange, they ignored me." But you were simply present with the flowers, the sunlight, the gentle breeze. No intention to ignore. No hidden meaning. Just a human being naturally absorbed in their own peaceful moment. Let this understanding wash over you like warm honey. Other people live in their own inner worlds, just as you live in yours. Sometimes those worlds overlap in beautiful ways. Sometimes they drift apart, like streams flowing toward different valleys. Both are natural. Both are perfect as they are. Tonight, practice watching your thoughts the way you might watch butterflies in a summer meadow. See them flutter in. Notice their colors, their patterns. Watch them flutter away. No need to catch them or keep them. Just gentle observation. Just peaceful watching. Your breath continues its natural rhythm. Your heart beats with perfect timing. Your body knows exactly how to rest and restore itself. There's an ancient wisdom flowing through you that needs no guidance from your thinking mind. Like a tree that grows toward the light without planning its path, you can trust this natural wisdom to guide you toward peace. You don't need to figure everything out tonight. You don't need to solve any puzzles or answer any questions. You simply need to rest in the knowing that all is well. Feel your body sinking deeper into comfort. Feel your mind becoming as spacious as the evening sky. You are held by something larger than your thoughts, something more peaceful than your worries, something more loving than your fears. The ancient teachers who discovered these truths are with you now in spirit. Their wisdom flows through these words like a gentle river of peace. Let it carry you deeper into rest. Let it wash away anything that no longer serves you. Let it remind you of the perfect peace that has always been your true nature. As you rest here in this gentle darkness, imagine walking into a moonlit garden. This is no ordinary garden. It's a place where the ancient masters came to practice the sacred art of release. Each flower here represents something you've been holding on to. Each pathway leads toward deeper freedom. There's a story whispered among the old temples about a tea master named Rikyu, who lived 400 years ago in Japan. He was known throughout the land for creating the most exquisite tea ceremonies, moments of such perfect beauty that people would travel for weeks just to attend. But Rikyu had a secret sorrow. He had fallen deeply in love with a woman named Yuki, whose name meant snow. She was beautiful, intelligent, and kind. But she was also promised to another man, a powerful lord who could provide for her family in ways that Rikyu, despite his fame, could not. Every morning, Rikyu would prepare tea and imagine Yuki sitting across from him. He would picture her delicate hands holding the ceramic cup, imagine the conversations they might have, dream of a life where they could be together. His tea ceremonies became more elaborate, more beautiful, as if creating perfect moments could somehow change his reality. One evening, as cherry blossoms fell like gentle tears outside his window, Rikyu realized something profound. He wasn't loving Yuki, he was loving his idea of loving Yuki. He was clinging to a dream that existed only in his mind, while the real Yuki was living her actual life somewhere else entirely. That night, Rikyu performed one final tea ceremony. But this time, he prepared tea for no one but himself. As he lifted the cup to his lips, he whispered a prayer of gratitude for having known love, even if he couldn't possess it. Then he released his grip on the dream. Not with bitterness or anger, but with the gentle grace of cherry blossoms falling naturally when their time has come. The next morning, Rikyu's tea ceremonies became even more beautiful than before. But now they carried a different quality, not the desperate beauty of someone trying to control life, but the effortless beauty of someone who had learned to dance with it. Feel this story settling into your heart, like morning dew on grass. Rikyu discovered what the Buddha called one of life's greatest truths. We suffer not because we love, but because we grasp. There's a difference between holding someone gently in your heart and clutching them desperately in your mind. Think of how you hold a soap bubble. Cup your hands too tightly, and it bursts. Hold your hands too loosely, and it floats away. But find that perfect, gentle curve of your palms, and the bubble can rest there, rainbow colors dancing on its surface, beautiful and free. This is how love is meant to be held. In your own life, perhaps you've found yourself creating elaborate mental ceremonies around someone. Checking their social media like Rikyu, preparing his perfect tea settings. Imagining conversations like he imagined Yuki's presence. Trying to create perfect moments in your mind because the real moments feel beyond your control. But what if tonight, like Rikyu, you could perform your own ceremony of release? Not a ceremony of giving up or pushing away, but a ceremony of loving so purely that you set the other person free to be exactly who they are. Breathe in this possibility. Breathe out any need to control how someone else feels about you. The ancient Zen masters had a saying, "If you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him." This sounds shocking until you understand its meaning. It means that even your ideas about enlightenment, about perfection, about how things should be, these too must be released. Even your image of the perfect relationship, the perfect response, the perfect outcome. When you think about someone constantly, you're often thinking about your idea of them, not the actual person. You're loving a character in a story your mind has written. But real people are so much more complex, so much more surprising, so much more beautifully imperfect than any story could capture. Imagine you have a photograph of a flowing river. You might treasure that photograph, study every detail, carry it with you everywhere. But would you mistake the photograph for the actual river? The real river is always changing, always moving, always alive with new currents and new reflections. Your mental image of someone is like that photograph, a beautiful moment frozen in time, but not the living, breathing, ever-changing reality of who they are. Here in this moonlit garden of release, you can begin to practice a different kind of love. Love that says, I care about you so much that I release my need to understand everything about you. Love that whispers, I wish you happiness, even if that happiness doesn't include me. Love that flows like water, touching everything, clinging to nothing. There's an old Sufi poem that goes, love is the bridge between you and everything. But bridges don't possess what they connect. They simply allow passage. They facilitate connection without demanding ownership. This is the love that brings peace instead of suffering. As your body continues to relax into this soft darkness, practice releasing one small grip at a time. Maybe it's the need to know exactly what someone thinks of you. Maybe it's the desire to control when they respond to your messages. Maybe it's the fantasy of a perfect future together, or the regret about a perfect past that's gone. With each exhale, imagine one of these grips loosening, like untying knots in silk ribbon, gently, patiently, without force. Feel how much lighter you become as each knot comes undone. The Buddha taught that everything in life is impermanent, always changing, always flowing, always in motion. The person you're thinking about is not the same person they were yesterday, and they won't be exactly the same person tomorrow. You're not the same person either. Everything is like clouds in the sky, like waves in the ocean, like seasons of the year, constantly transforming. This isn't sad news. It's the most liberating truth in the universe. It means that no pain lasts forever. No difficulty is permanent. No pattern of thinking is set in stone. Right now, in this very moment, you can begin to change your relationship with your thoughts. Right now, you can start practicing the ancient art of loving release. Think of autumn trees letting go of their leaves. They don't hold on out of fear that they'll never be beautiful again. They trust the natural cycle of life. They know that letting go is not loss, it's preparation for new growth. The leaves fall like golden prayers, each one a small act of faith in the unseen spring that's already on its way. You too can practice this kind of trust. Trust that releasing your grip on someone doesn't mean you care less. Trust that letting go of control doesn't mean giving up. Trust that love can flow even more freely when it's not trapped behind the dam of your desperate thinking. As you rest here in this sacred space between sleeping and waking, between thinking and being, Feel yourself becoming like those autumn trees. Feel yourself learning the ancient wisdom of graceful release. Each thought you let go becomes like a golden leaf falling softly to the earth, nourishing the soil for whatever wants to grow next in your life. The night air is soft against your skin. Your breath is slow and natural. Your heart beats with the same rhythm that has sustained countless beings before you. You are part of something much larger than your individual thoughts and worries. You are held by the same love that moves the stars and grows the flowers. Rest in this knowing. Trust this ancient rhythm. Let yourself be carried by the gentle current of life itself. Settle deeper into this peaceful darkness. Your breath has found its natural rhythm, like gentle waves lapping against a moonlit shore. Tonight, we discover one of the most startling truths the ancient masters ever uncovered, a secret so simple it's been hiding in plain sight. In the mountains of Tibet, there once lived a young woman named Pema, who worked as a mirror polisher in the local monastery. Every day, she would carefully clean the bronze mirrors that the monks used for their morning ablutions. She took great pride in making each surface perfectly clear, perfectly reflective. But Pema had a problem that tormented her day and night. She was convinced that everyone in the monastery was constantly judging her work, her appearance, her every movement. When the head monk passed by without speaking, she was certain he disapproved of her mirror polishing. When the cook smiled at her, she wondered if it was a mocking smile. When other servants whispered among themselves, she was sure they were talking about her mistakes. One morning, an old master named Tenzin found Pema crying beside a pile of freshly polished mirrors. "Child," he asked gently, "what brings such sorrow to your heart?" "Master," Pema whispered, "I spend all day making mirrors perfectly clear, but I can never see clearly myself. Everyone here must think I'm foolish, clumsy, unworthy. I catch them looking at me, and I know they're thinking terrible thoughts about who I am." Old Tenzin picked up one of her perfectly polished mirrors and held it up to catch the morning sunlight. "Tell me, dear one, what do you see in this mirror?" "I see my face, master. My worried expression, my imperfect features." "And what does the mirror think about your face?" Pema looked confused. "Master, mirrors don't think. They just reflect what's placed in front of them." "Exactly," Tenzin smiled. "This mirror doesn't judge your beauty or ugliness. It doesn't prefer one face over another. It doesn't have opinions about what it shows. It simply reflects, clearly and without commentary." He paused, letting this sink in. "Now tell me, when you look at other people, what are you really seeing? Are you seeing them clearly, like this mirror? Or are you seeing your own thoughts about what they might be thinking about you?" This question changed Pema's life forever. She realized she had been living in a house of mirrors, but all the mirrors were reflecting her own thoughts back to her. She wasn't seeing other people at all. She was seeing her own fears, insecurities, and assumptions projected onto everyone around her. Feel this truth settling into your awareness like gentle rain soaking into dry earth. When you worry about what someone thinks of you, you're rarely dealing with what they actually think. You're dealing with what you think they think. You're arguing with voices in your own head, not with real people in the real world. The Buddha taught something revolutionary. Most of our suffering comes from mistaking our thoughts about reality for reality itself. It's like looking at the moon's reflection in a lake and trying to touch the moon by reaching into the water. The reflection seems real, but your hand passes right through it. Think about the last time you were certain someone was upset with you. Maybe they seemed quieter than usual, or they took longer to respond to a message. Your mind immediately created a story. They're angry. I must have done something wrong. They probably don't want to be around me anymore. But what if they were simply tired? What if they were dealing with family stress, work pressure, or just feeling overwhelmed? What if your story was completely wrong? Here's what's beautiful and terrifying about this realization. If most of what you think others think about you is actually just your own mental projection, then you've been the author of your own suffering. But that also means you have the power to write a different story. There's an ancient Zen saying, "You are perfect as you are, and you could use a little improvement." This playful paradox points to something profound. The improvement isn't about changing who you are, it's about changing how clearly you see. Imagine you're wearing sunglasses with heavily tinted lenses, but you've forgotten you have them on. Everything looks darker than it really is. You might think the world has become a gloomy place, when actually you just need to remove the glasses. Your thoughts about what others think of you are like those forgotten sunglasses. They color everything you see, but they're not part of the actual scenery. Most people are far too busy with their own inner worlds to spend much time judging yours. Right now, someone you're worried about might be wondering if you like them. Someone you think disapproves of, you might actually admire you but be too shy to say so. Someone you're sure is thinking about you might not have thought about you at all today, not because you don't matter, but because they're lost in their own concerns, their own hopes, their own quiet worries. This isn't meant to make you feel insignificant. It's meant to set you free. Free from the exhausting job of trying to manage everyone's opinion of you. Free from the impossible task of reading minds that you can never actually read. Breathe in this freedom. Breathe out the need to know what everyone thinks. There's a beautiful practice that Pema learned from old Master Tenzin. Every morning she would look in her polished mirrors and remind herself, this mirror reflects without judgment. Today, I will try to see others as clearly as this mirror sees, without adding my own thoughts, fears, or stories to what I observe. You can practice this too. When you catch yourself creating stories about what someone might be thinking, pause and ask, am I seeing this person clearly, or am I seeing my own thoughts reflected back at me? Most of the time, you'll discover you've been arguing with your own imagination. The most liberating truth in the world is this: you don't need everyone to think well of you. In fact, it's impossible. Some people will understand you, others won't. Some will appreciate your unique qualities, others will be drawn to different types of people. This isn't personal, it's just the beautiful diversity of human nature. A rose doesn't worry that the person who prefers daisies doesn't appreciate its beauty. It simply blooms fully, offering its fragrance to anyone who comes near. It doesn't change its color to please the daisy lover or feel rejected when someone walks past without stopping to smell it. It remains perfectly itself, knowing that those who resonate with its particular beauty will find it. Tonight, as you rest in this gentle darkness, practice being like that rose. Be fully yourself without needing to monitor everyone's reaction. Let yourself bloom naturally, authentically, without constantly checking to see if you're blooming correctly. Feel your shoulders relaxing as you release the weight of everyone's imagined judgments. Feel your jaw softening as you stop rehearsing conversations that will never happen. Feel your heart opening as you remember that you are lovable exactly as you are, regardless of what anyone else thinks or doesn't think about you. The ancient masters discovered that peace comes not from being loved by everyone, but from being at home with yourself. When you stop seeking approval in others' eyes, you can finally see the approval that has always been shining in your own heart. When you stop trying to read everyone's mind, you can finally rest in the quiet wisdom of your own. Rest now, in this knowing. You are enough. You have always been enough. The opinions of others, real or imagined, cannot change this fundamental truth. You are held by something larger than any human judgment, the same love that guides stars in their courses and teaches flowers when to bloom. Trust this love. Rest in this love. Let it carry you deeper into the peaceful sleep that has been waiting for you all along. In the soft embrace of this deepening night, your body has found its natural rhythm of rest. Each breath carries you further from the day's concerns and closer to something timeless. Tonight we explore a mystery that has puzzled human hearts for thousands of years: why we suffer when we try to hold on to what is always flowing away. There's a story told in the old monasteries of Korea about a fisherman named Min-jun who lived beside a great river. This river was his life. He knew every bend, every shallow place, every spot where the fish gathered in the early morning mist. For 30 years, he had cast his nets into these familiar waters. But Min-jun had fallen into a strange habit. Every evening, after bringing his boat to shore, he would stand at the water's edge and try to recognize the exact water that had carried his boat that morning. He would search the flowing current for the same ripples, the same patterns of light, the same bubbles that he remembered from dawn. "Where is the water that blessed my nets at sunrise?" he would ask the river. "Where are the waves that sparkled so beautifully when I first pushed off from shore?" Night after night, he stood there searching, growing more frustrated as the water flowed endlessly past, never bringing back the exact moment he was trying to recapture. One evening, an old monk traveling along the riverbank noticed Min-jun's nightly ritual. He watched the fisherman standing knee-deep in the current, cupping water in his hands letting it slip through his fingers with a look of profound loss. "Friend," the monk called gently, "what are you seeking in those waters?" Minjun looked up with tears in his eyes. "Master, I'm trying to find this morning's river. The water that carried me to the best fishing I've had in years. The waves that reflected the sunrise so perfectly, it took my breath away. But no matter how hard I look, I can never find those same waters again." The old monk waded into the river beside him. "Tell me," he said, scooping up a handful of the flowing water, "is this the same river you fished in this morning?" "Yes," Minjun replied, confused. "And yet," the monk continued, letting the water flow through his fingers, "is this the same water?" Minjun watched the water disappear downstream and suddenly understood. "No," he whispered. "It's the same river, but completely different water." "Exactly," the monk smiled. "The river remains, but the water is always new. You can never step into the same river twice, because it's not the same river, and you're not the same person. Everything flows. Everything changes. The beauty isn't in holding on to any particular moment. It's in learning to love the flowing itself." Feel this ancient wisdom washing over you like gentle waves. The person you're thinking about, the relationship you remember, the conversation you keep replaying, they're all like that morning river water that Minjun could never find again. Not because they weren't real or beautiful, but because they were part of the natural flow of time. The Buddha taught that one of our deepest sources of suffering is trying to make permanent what is inherently impermanent. It's like trying to freeze a sunset or capture the wind in a jar. The very attempt destroys the beauty we're trying to preserve. Think about a time when you were completely happy with someone. Maybe you were laughing together, sharing a perfect moment of connection. In that instant, everything felt right with the world. But then, perhaps without realizing it, you tried to make that moment last forever. You began analyzing it, trying to understand exactly what made it so special, attempting to recreate those same conditions again and again. But moments of joy are like cherry blossoms. Their beauty lies partly in their brief, unrepeatable nature. The Japanese have a word for this, mono no aware, the bittersweet awareness of the impermanence of all things. It's not sadness, exactly, but a deep appreciation that includes the knowledge that nothing lasts forever. When you constantly think about someone, you're often trying to hold on to a version of them that existed in a particular moment. Maybe it's how they looked at you during your first conversation. Maybe it's how they made you feel on a day when everything seemed possible. Maybe it's the potential you glimpsed in what you could be together. But people, like rivers, are always flowing, always changing. The person you're remembering has had thousands of experiences since that moment you're holding on to. They've grown, learned new things, been influenced by conversations you weren't part of, developed new interests, faced challenges that have shaped them in ways you may never know. They are like today's river water, connected to what came before, but fundamentally new. And you? You are also flowing, also changing, also becoming someone new with each passing moment. The person who experienced that beautiful moment with them is like yesterday's river water, real, precious, but already part of the past. Trying to return to exactly who you were then is as impossible as Minjun's search for this morning's ripples. This doesn't mean those moments weren't meaningful. The monk didn't tell Minjun to stop appreciating the river. He taught him to appreciate it differently, not by grasping for what was gone, but by opening his heart to what was always arriving fresh and new. There's profound freedom in accepting the flowing nature of life. It means you don't have to figure out how to get back to any previous moment with someone. You don't have to solve the puzzle of recreating past happiness. You can simply be present with whatever is flowing through your life right now. Breathe in this acceptance. Breathe out any need to return to what has already flowed away. When you find yourself thinking, if only I could go back to how things were, or if only they were still the same person they used to be, remember Minjun standing in the river. You're searching for water that has already joined the sea, but the river itself continues, always fresh, always offering new possibilities for beauty, for connection, for joy. The ancient Taoists taught that the wise person learns to move like water, flowing naturally around obstacles, always moving toward its destination, never fighting against the current of change. When you stop trying to swim upstream toward moments that have already passed, you can finally flow with the natural direction of your life. This flowing with change doesn't mean becoming passive or giving up on love. Water is incredibly powerful precisely because it doesn't resist. It carves canyons, moves mountains, and shapes entire landscapes through patient, consistent flow. Your love, too, becomes more powerful when it flows naturally rather than trying to dam up time. Tonight, practice loving like water. Send gentle good wishes downstream toward the people who have flowed through your life. Appreciate them not as they were in any particular moment, but as fellow rivers making their own way toward the vast ocean of existence. Wish them well on their journey. Trust that your paths may converge again in new and beautiful ways, or that they may flow toward different valleys, and that both possibilities are perfect expressions of life's natural wisdom. Feel yourself relaxing into this natural flow. Your body knows how to change and renew itself continuously. Your breath flows in and out without your control. Your heart beats with a rhythm that has been flowing since before you were born and will continue flowing until you rejoin the great river of existence from which you came. You are part of something much larger than your individual story, part of the endless flowing of life itself. Rest in this current. Trust this movement. Let yourself be carried by the ancient rhythm that knows exactly where you need to go, even when your thinking mind cannot see around the next bend in the river. All is flowing as it should. All is well. All is carrying you home to the peace that flows beneath all change. As the night deepens around you like a soft blanket, your breath has become a gentle tide. In and out, carrying away the day's accumulations, leaving space for something new to emerge. Tonight, we discover perhaps the most paradoxical teaching of all, how emptiness becomes the source of true fullness. In the bamboo forests of ancient Vietnam, there lived a potter named Linh, who was famous throughout the region for her beautiful tea bowls. People would travel for days to purchase one of her creations, each one perfectly shaped, perfectly balanced, perfectly smooth to the touch. But Linh carried a secret burden. She had been apprenticed to a master potter named Thay Minh, and she believed herself to be deeply in love with him. Every day, as she worked the clay, her mind was filled with thoughts of him. Every bowl she shaped became a vessel for her longing. Every glaze she applied carried the colors of her hope that someday he would notice her feelings. Her tea bowls grew more and more elaborate. She carved intricate patterns into their surfaces, painted them with increasingly complex designs, added precious gold leaf to catch the light. Each bowl became a love letter written in clay, desperate and beautiful, and completely unread by the one for whom it was intended. One day, Thay Minh watched her working on yet another ornate creation. "Student," he said gently, "your technical skill grows daily. But tell me, what makes a tea bowl perfect?" Lin's heart raced. Finally, he was asking her opinion, engaging with her work. "Master," she replied eagerly, "surely it's the beauty of the decoration, the sophistication of the glaze, the complexity of the carving." Thay Minh picked up her latest creation, a bowl so covered with ornate patterns that barely any plain clay remained visible. "This is very skillful," he said. "But may I show you something?" He led her to a simple wooden shelf where sat a single tea bowl. It was completely plain, no decoration, no patterns, no glaze, except a simple clear coating that revealed the natural beauty of the clay itself. But somehow, this simple bowl seemed to glow with an inner light. "This bowl," Thay Minh said, "was made by my own teacher 50 years ago. Do you know what makes it perfect?" Linh studied the bowl carefully. I don't see anything special about it, Master. It's so plain, so empty of decoration." "Exactly," Thay Minh smiled. "It's empty. And because it's empty, it can hold anything. Tea, flowers, rice, water, whatever is needed. Your beautiful bowls are so full of decoration that they can only hold what you've decided they should hold. This simple bowl is so empty that it can hold the whole world." He paused, letting her absorb this teaching. "The same is true of the heart, dear student. When your heart is full of your own ideas about love, your own plans and expectations and desires, it becomes like your decorated bowls, beautiful but limited. When your heart empties itself of all these decorations, it becomes like this simple bowl, able to hold whatever love wants to bring." Feel this teaching settling into your awareness like rain soaking into thirsty earth. When you fill your mind with constant thoughts about someone, you're like Linh decorating her bowls with increasingly complex patterns. Each thought, each fantasy, each worry becomes another layer of decoration that actually limits your capacity to receive real love, real connection, real presence. The Zen masters discovered something revolutionary. The fullest life comes from the emptiest mind. Not empty in the sense of blank or lifeless, but empty like space itself, vast, open, able to contain stars and galaxies without being crowded. Think about the space in your room right now. That space seems like nothing, doesn't it? But without it, there would be no room for furniture, no room for you, no room for anything to exist. The emptiness isn't the absence of something important. It's what makes everything else possible. Your mind works the same way. When it's cluttered with endless thoughts about someone, analyzing their every word, replaying past conversations, imagining future scenarios, there's no space left for actual presence. No room for surprise, for spontaneity, for the genuine unfolding of whatever wants to happen naturally between you. Buddha taught that attachment is like filling a cup with muddy water. You might think you're accumulating something valuable, but actually you're making the cup useless for holding anything pure. Only when you empty the cup completely can clear, fresh water flow in. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent or cold. True emptiness is the most loving state possible because it places no conditions on what it receives. Like Thay Min's simple bowl, an empty heart can hold joy without grasping it, hold sorrow without drowning in it, hold love without demanding that it take any particular form. Imagine you're holding a camera, trying to photograph a beautiful sunset. But instead of looking at the actual sunset, you keep adjusting the camera settings, checking the screen, worrying about getting the perfect shot. You're so busy trying to capture the moment that you miss experiencing it. The sunset happens while you're focused on your equipment. This is what happens when you fill your mind with thoughts about someone, instead of simply being present with them when they're actually there. You miss the real person while you're busy managing your mental image of them. Breathe in this possibility of emptiness. Breathe out the need to fill every moment with thinking. There's a beautiful practice that comes from this understanding. The next time you find yourself thinking obsessively about someone, pause and ask, what would it feel like to approach this person with an empty cup instead of a full one? Instead of bringing all your expectations, interpretations, and mental decorations, what if you brought simple, open presence? This is what the great mystics called beginner's mind, approaching each moment as if you've never experienced anything like it before. When you see someone with beginner's mind, you see them fresh, without the overlay of all your previous thoughts about who they are or should be. You become like that simple clay bowl, ready to receive whatever they actually want to offer. The most profound connections happen in emptiness. When two people meet without agendas, without scripts, without the elaborate decorations of expectation, something magical becomes possible. Real intimacy, real understanding, real love, these arise spontaneously in the space between thoughts, not in the content of thinking itself. Tonight, as your body continues its natural descent into rest, practice becoming like Thay Min's perfect bowl. Let your mind empty itself of all the complex patterns you've been carving around the people in your life. Let go of the elaborate glazes of interpretation and analysis. Return to the simple, natural beauty of pure awareness. Feel how spacious this becomes. Notice how much lighter you feel when you're not carrying all those mental decorations. Sense the vast openness that emerges when you stop trying to fill every moment with thinking. In this emptiness, paradoxically, you become full of presence, full of peace, full of love that doesn't depend on any particular outcome. You become a space where miracles can happen naturally, where connection can flow without obstruction, where life can surprise you in ways your thinking mind could never plan or predict. Rest now in this perfect emptiness that contains everything. Like the space between musical notes that makes the melody possible, like the silence between words that gives them meaning, you are the conscious emptiness in which all experience arises and dissolves. This is your true nature, not the thoughts that come and go, but the spacious awareness that remains constant through all change. Sleep in this knowing. Dream in this vastness. Wake tomorrow from this same perfect emptiness that is your deepest home. In this deepening sanctuary of night, your breathing has become like gentle incense rising from a peaceful temple. Each exhale releases what no longer serves. Each inhale draws in the ancient wisdom that has been waiting patiently for you to remember it. Tonight, we enter the most sacred garden of all, the one where you finally learn to stop judging your own heart. Deep in the mountains of Japan, where morning mist clings to ancient pine trees, there lived a garden master named Kenji, who tended the grounds of a small monastery. For 20 years, he had worked to create the perfect Zen garden, every stone precisely placed, every rake mark in the sand absolutely straight, every moss-covered path leading exactly where it should. But Kenji had a secret that tortured him daily. Despite all his mastery of external gardens, his inner landscape felt like chaos. He would spend hours each night lying awake, thinking about Yuki, a young woman who visited the monastery occasionally with her grandmother. These thoughts came like weeds in his carefully tended mind, and he fought them with the same precision he used to maintain his gardens. "I shouldn't think about her," he would tell himself sternly. "I'm a monk. These feelings are wrong. I must eliminate them completely." He tried meditation, cold baths, extra work, fasting, anything to uproot what he saw as the invasive thoughts disrupting his spiritual peace. But the more he fought these feelings, the stronger they seemed to grow. Like trying to hold a beach ball underwater, his suppressed thoughts would pop up with even greater force when he least expected them. During morning prayers, while raking the sand, even while teaching young students about mindfulness, Yuki's gentle smile would appear in his awareness, and he would feel like a failure as both a monk and a human being. One autumn evening, the old abbot found Kenji sitting in his garden, tears streaming down his face as he stared at a section where weeds had grown through his perfectly raked sand. "Master," Kenji said brokenly, "I cannot even maintain this simple garden properly. How can I hope to cultivate wisdom when I cannot control my own mind?" The abbot sat beside him on the cool earth. "Tell me, Kenji, What do you see when you look at these weeds? I see disorder, Kenji replied. Imperfection. Things growing where they shouldn't be. Evidence of my failure to maintain proper discipline. The old abbot smiled gently and plucked one of the small wildflowers that had sprouted between the carefully placed stones. And what does this flower see when it looks at itself? Kenji looked confused. Master, flowers don't judge themselves. Exactly, the abbot nodded. This flower doesn't worry that it's growing in the wrong place. It doesn't compare itself to the carefully cultivated plants in other parts of the garden. It simply grows toward the light with perfect naturalness. It blooms where it finds itself, without apology or shame. He paused, letting this sink in. Tell me, dear student, in all of nature, have you ever seen a flower that grew wrong? This question opened something profound in Kenji's understanding. He began to see that his thoughts about Yuki weren't invasive weeds disrupting some perfect garden of spirituality. They were simply human feelings arising naturally in a human heart. The suffering came not from having these feelings, but from judging them as wrong, from trying to force his inner landscape to conform to some idealized image of what a monk should feel. Feel this gentle revolution settling into your own heart. How much energy have you spent judging your thoughts about someone as wrong, inappropriate, or embarrassing? How often have you told yourself you should stop thinking about them, should stop caring so much, should be stronger, or wiser, or more detached? The Buddha taught something radical for his time and ours. The path to freedom doesn't begin with eliminating difficult emotions. It begins with accepting them as natural phenomena, like weather passing through the sky of your awareness. You don't judge clouds for being cloudy, or rain for being wet. They're simply expressing their nature. Your feelings about someone are like wildflowers growing in the garden of your heart. They didn't ask permission to grow there. They arose from conditions beyond your control, a chance meeting, a moment of connection, the mysterious chemistry of human attraction or love. Fighting them is like fighting the fact that spring follows winter or that water flows downhill. This doesn't mean you have to act on every feeling or let emotions run your life. The wildflower in the abbot's hand bloomed beautifully without taking over the entire garden. Your feelings can exist naturally without dominating your entire experience. Think about a time when you felt ashamed of how much you were thinking about someone. Maybe friends told you to just get over it, or stop being so obsessed. Maybe you told yourself these things. But what if there was nothing wrong with your feelings? What if the only problem was the war you declared against your own heart? There's profound wisdom in the way wildflowers grow. They don't waste energy arguing with their circumstances. They don't spend time wishing they were different flowers or growing in different soil. They simply receive whatever light is available and bloom as fully as possible where they find themselves. Breathe in this acceptance of your own natural flowering. Breathe out any shame about the thoughts and feelings that have grown in your heart. The ancient masters discovered that what we resist persists, and what we accept transforms. When Kenji stopped fighting his feelings about Yuki, something beautiful happened. The obsessive quality began to fade naturally, like wildflowers that bloom magnificently and then, having expressed their nature fully, quietly release their seeds and return to the earth. This doesn't mean his feelings disappeared overnight, but they stopped being a source of suffering because he stopped making them wrong. He could acknowledge them with the same gentle appreciation he showed for unexpected flowers in his garden. Ah, here's a feeling of longing. How interesting. How human. How perfectly natural. Tonight, practice being the gardener of your own heart, who has learned to see beauty in whatever grows there. When a thought about someone arises, instead of immediately trying to weed it out, pause and observe it with curiosity. What color is this feeling? What shape does this longing take? How does this particular variety of care express itself in the garden of your awareness? You might discover that when you stop calling your feelings weeds, they begin to behave more like wildflowers, blooming naturally, adding unexpected beauty to your inner landscape, and then gracefully completing their cycle without causing the drama that resistance creates. The most beautiful gardens aren't the ones where everything is rigidly controlled. They're the ones where cultivated intention dances harmoniously with natural spontaneity. Your heart can be this kind of garden, tended with love, but not tyrannized by perfection. There's an old saying, "The flower that blooms in adversity is the most rare and beautiful of all." The feelings you've been judging as wrong, inappropriate, or inconvenient may actually be the most authentic expressions of your capacity to love. They deserve the same gentle appreciation you would give to any natural wonder. Rest now in this garden where nothing grows wrong. Feel your heart expanding to include all the feelings you've been trying to eliminate. Let them exist as naturally as moonlight on water, as effortlessly as your breathing, as beautifully as any flower that has ever bloomed. You are not broken for feeling deeply. You are not weak for thinking often about someone who touched your heart. You are human, beautifully and completely human, growing toward love in the only way you know how. Trust this growth. Honor this flowering. Rest in the perfect naturalness of your own tender heart. As the night wraps around you like a mother's embrace, your awareness has become like still water reflecting moonlight. Each breath draws you deeper into the mystery we explore tonight, the profound difference between the love that grasps and the love that liberates both giver and receiver. In the mist-covered hills of ancient Tibet, there stood a monastery famous for its bell tower. The bell was said to have been crafted by a master metalsmith who poured his entire heart into its creation. When rung, it produced the most beautiful sound anyone had ever heard, pure, clear notes that seemed to carry prayers directly to the heavens. A young monk named Tenzin was assigned to ring this bell each dawn and dusk. At first, he approached the task with reverence and joy. But gradually, something changed in his relationship with the bell. He began to feel possessive of it, protective of its sound. He would polish it obsessively, guard it jealously, and worry constantly that someone else might not ring it with proper technique. When visitors came to hear the famous bell, Tenzin would hover anxiously nearby. If someone praised its tone, he felt proud, as if he had created the music himself. If someone seemed unimpressed, he felt personally rejected. He began ringing it more frequently than required, desperately seeking the perfect strike that would prove his worthiness as its keeper. One morning, an old wandering teacher arrived at the monastery. Word of the bell had reached even the remote caves where he meditated, and he had walked for many days to hear it. Tenzin was thrilled. Finally, someone who would truly appreciate his bell. He prepared for what he knew would be the most perfect ringing of his life. But as Tenzin raised the striker, his hands trembling with nervous energy, the old teacher gently placed a hand on his arm. "Wait, young monk. Before you ring, tell me, who makes the music? You or the bell?" "Well," Tenzin replied, confused, "I strike it, but the bell produces the sound." "And when you're not here," the teacher continued, "can the bell ring?" "No, of course not. It needs someone to strike it." "Ah," the old man smiled. "So you believe you create the bell's voice?" Tenzin nodded eagerly. "Yes, I've practiced for years to find the perfect technique, the exact right force, the ideal timing." The teacher walked over to the bell and simply touched it with one finger. To Tenzin's amazement, the bell began to vibrate, producing a soft, ethereal tone that was somehow more beautiful than any sound he had ever coaxed from it. "But how?" Tenzin gasped. "You barely touched it." "The bell always contained this music," the teacher replied gently. "I didn't create it or control it. I simply provided the lightest invitation for it to express its natural voice. When you strike it with such intensity, with such need to produce a perfect sound, you actually interfere with its ability to sing freely." He paused, letting this teaching settle. The most beautiful music arises not from force, but from the gentlest touch that allows something to express its own true nature. Feel this wisdom resonating in your own heart like that gentle bell tone. How often have you tried to create the perfect interaction with someone through your own effort, your own intense focus, your own carefully planned approach? How many times have you discovered that the harder you try to make something beautiful happen, the more elusive that beauty becomes? The Buddha taught that there are two kinds of love, the love that binds and the love that frees. Binding love says, "I love you, so you must respond in a certain way to make me feel secure." Freeing love says, "I love you, so I want you to be exactly who you are, even if that doesn't include loving me back." Think about the difference between Tenzin's desperate striking of the bell and the teacher's gentle touch. When you constantly think about someone, analyzing their words, trying to decode their feelings, planning the perfect thing to say or do, you're like Tenzin, working so hard to create the perfect sound that you actually prevent natural harmony from arising. Real connection, like the bell's true music, emerges from spaciousness, not from effort. It arises when you touch someone's life lightly enough that they feel free to respond authentically, rather than feeling pressured to produce the reaction you're hoping for. This doesn't mean being passive or indifferent. The teacher's touch was incredibly intentional, but it was intention without attachment to outcome. He wanted to hear the bell's voice, but he didn't need it to be any particular voice. He was curious about what would emerge, rather than determined to make something specific happen. Breathe in this lightness of touch. Breathe out any need to force beautiful moments with others. When you love someone with this gentle freedom, something magical happens. They begin to feel safe enough to show you their authentic self, the way the bell felt safe enough to sing its true song when touched without demand. People bloom in the presence of love that doesn't try to reshape them. Maybe you've experienced this yourself. Perhaps there's been someone in your life who loved you so freely that you felt completely relaxed in their presence. You didn't have to perform or pretend or try to be anyone other than exactly who you were. In that safety, your own authentic beauty could emerge naturally, like music from a bell touched with perfect gentleness. This is the love that heals both the lover and the beloved. When you stop trying so hard to create specific outcomes with someone, you create space for outcomes more beautiful than anything you could have planned. When you release your grip on how someone should respond to you, you free them to respond from their deepest truth, and often that truth is more loving than anything you could have demanded. The old teacher had another lesson for Tenzin. "Notice," he said, "that when I touched the bell gently, the sound continued long after I removed my finger. But when you strike it forcefully, the sound is sharp and brief, then quickly fades. True love works the same way," he continued. A gentle touch of authentic care can resonate in someone's heart for years. But love that demands, that grasps, that tries too hard, it makes a lot of noise initially, but leaves no lasting vibration. Think about the people who have touched your life most deeply. Were they the ones who pursued you most intensely, who thought about you constantly, who tried hardest to win your affection? Or were they the ones who offered their care so freely that it felt like a gift with no strings attached? Tonight, as you rest in this deepening peace, practice loving like that wise teacher's touch. Send gentle good wishes to the people in your life, but let those wishes be like fingertips barely brushing a bell, light enough to invite their true nature to emerge, free enough to allow whatever response feels authentic to them. You don't need to ring anyone's bell loudly to prove your love. You don't need to strike repeatedly to ensure you're heard. Sometimes the gentlest touch, the lightest presence, the most spacious love creates music that resonates far longer than any amount of effort or intensity. Feel yourself learning this ancient art of gentle loving. Feel your heart discovering how to care deeply while holding lightly. Notice how much more peaceful it becomes when you trust that real love, both given and received, arises naturally when the conditions are right, like bells that ring themselves, when touched by the perfect combination of intention and freedom. Rest now in this understanding. You are both the bell and the one who touches it gently. Your own heart sings most beautifully when you approach it with the same spacious love you're learning to offer others. Listen to that inner music. Trust its natural rhythm. Let it carry you into the deep rest where all bells return to silence and all love returns to its source. The darkness around you has become a friend now, hasn't it? Each word we've shared has been like a smooth stone dropped into the still pond of your awareness, creating ripples that reach places your conscious mind cannot follow. But tonight, we must speak of something most people spend their entire lives avoiding: the uncomfortable truth about why we really can't stop thinking about certain people. There was once a merchant in ancient Persia named Darius, who prided himself on his rational mind and disciplined emotions. He ran his business with precision, treated his employees fairly, and maintained cordial relationships with everyone in his community. Darius was respected, successful, and thoroughly convinced that he had mastered the art of living wisely. Then he met Soraya. She was unlike anyone in his orderly world, unpredictable, passionate, sometimes gentle as morning mist, sometimes fierce as a desert storm. When she laughed, it was like music he'd never heard before. When she was quiet, her silence held mysteries that made his chest tight with longing. For the first time in his carefully controlled life, Darius found himself completely undone. But here's what tortured him most. Soraya seemed to care for him one day and be distant the next. She would seek his company enthusiastically, then disappear for weeks without explanation. She would look at him with such tenderness that he felt certain she loved him, then treat him with casual indifference that left him questioning everything. Darius became obsessed, not just with Soraya, but with solving the puzzle of her inconsistency. If I could just understand her pattern, he thought, I could predict her moods and respond correctly. He began keeping detailed notes about their interactions, analyzing which of his words made her smile and which made her withdraw. One night, as he sat surrounded by pages of his observations, a Sufi mystic named Hafez knocked on his door. The old man had been traveling and needed shelter, and Darius, despite his distraction, welcomed him in. Hafez noticed the scattered papers immediately. "My friend," Hafez said gently, "you seem to be studying someone very intensely." Embarrassed, Darius began to explain about Soraya's contradictory nature, her impossible moods, her baffling behavior. "I just need to understand what she wants from me," he concluded desperately. Hafez listened patiently, then asked a question that changed everything. "Tell me, Darius, what is it about her inconsistency that mirrors something you refuse to see in yourself?" The question hit like lightning. Darius realized that he'd spent years presenting himself as perfectly consistent, always reasonable, never emotional or unpredictable. But the truth was, he had his own hidden contradictions, moments of doubt he never admitted, feelings of inadequacy he buried under achievements, a wild, passionate part of himself he disciplined into silence. Soraya wasn't just someone he loved. She was everything he'd rejected about his own nature, walking around in human form. Her unpredictability, reflected his own suppressed spontaneity. Her emotional intensity mirrored feelings he'd spent decades trying to control. Her freedom to be inconsistent revealed his own terror of appearing imperfect. Stop for a moment and feel this revelation settling into your bones. What if the person you can't stop thinking about isn't just someone you want? What if they represent parts of yourself you've been afraid to embrace? Carl Jung, the great psychologist, discovered that we're often most fascinated by people who embody our own shadow, the aspects of ourselves we've deemed unacceptable. The confident person who obsesses over someone shy. The responsible person who can't stop thinking about someone carefree. The logical person who becomes fixated on someone emotional. It's not coincidence. Your psyche is trying to integrate something you've split off from yourself. Think about the qualities that most attract you to this person you keep thinking about. Are they more spontaneous than you? More mysterious? More willing to be vulnerable? More comfortable with intensity? What if these aren't qualities you need to possess through them, but qualities you need to develop within yourself? Darius discovered something profound when he stopped trying to decode Soraya and started exploring his own hidden contradictions. He began allowing himself to feel emotions without immediately analyzing them. He let himself be spontaneous occasionally, even if it wasn't perfectly efficient. He embraced the parts of himself that weren't always rational or predictable. And something miraculous happened. His obsession with Soraya began to transform into genuine appreciation. When he stopped needing her to be consistent, he could enjoy her spontaneity. When he stopped demanding that she fulfill his missing pieces, he could love her for who she actually was, not for what she represented. This doesn't mean he stopped caring about her, but his caring became lighter, more genuine, less desperate. He realized he'd been trying to love her with parts of himself that didn't even exist yet. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people never discover. You can't fully love someone else until you've made friends with all the parts of yourself. The intensity of your thoughts about another person is often proportional to how much you're rejecting about your own nature. Breathe with this possibility. What if your overthinking isn't really about them at all? What if it's your soul's way of pointing you towards something you need to reclaim within yourself? The mystics knew this secret. They understood that every external relationship is ultimately a conversation with different aspects of our own consciousness. When you're obsessing over why someone is distant, you might need to explore your own relationship with intimacy. When you can't stop wondering why they're so confident, you might need to befriend your own power. When you're fascinated by their emotional freedom, you might need to liberate your own feelings. This isn't psychology, it's ancient wisdom. The Buddha taught that all suffering comes from the illusion of separation. What appears to be out there in another person is always, somehow, also in here, within yourself. Tonight, instead of thinking about what this person means to you, try asking, what does my fascination with them reveal about what I'm ready to accept in myself? Instead of analyzing their behavior, explore what unexpressed part of my own nature is trying to emerge through this attraction. You might discover that your deepest longing isn't really for that person to love you back. Your deepest longing might be to love yourself completely, including the messy, contradictory, beautifully human parts you've been trying to improve or hide. When Darius finally embraced his own complexity, his own right to be inconsistent and emotional and imperfect, something wonderful happened with Soraya too. She didn't suddenly become the stable, predictable partner he'd originally wanted. Instead, they began relating as two whole human beings, rather than two halves seeking completion. Your person in your thoughts, they're not your missing piece. They're your mirror, reflecting back the parts of yourself that are ready to be loved. Stop trying to possess their qualities and start cultivating them within yourself. Stop trying to earn their acceptance and start accepting yourself. Stop trying to solve the mystery of who they are and start embracing the mystery of who you are. The shadow teaches by attraction. What you can't stop thinking about in others is what you can't stop rejecting in yourself. But when you turn toward your own shadow with curiosity instead of judgment, when you welcome home the exiled parts of your nature, something shifts in every relationship you have. You become whole. And whole people don't obsess, they love. They love freely, completely, without the desperate need that comes from inner emptiness. They become magnetic, not because they're trying to attract anyone, but because they've integrated all the scattered pieces of themselves into one beautiful, complex, perfectly imperfect human being. Rest now in this revolutionary possibility. Your thoughts about others are love letters from your soul, pointing you home to yourself. Something is shifting in you now, isn't it? Hours into this gentle journey, your defenses have softened like ice melting in spring sunlight. What began as a search for peace from overthinking has become something deeper, an initiation into truths most people never dare to face. Tonight, we step into the flames that transform everything they touch. In the depths of winter, high in the Himalayas, lived a hermit named Milarepa, who had chosen to spend his life in a cave, meditating on the nature of suffering. But this wasn't spiritual bypassing. Milarepa had come to the mountains carrying the heaviest burden of all. He could not forgive himself for the pain he had caused others in his youth. Years of rage and revenge had left him responsible for deaths, destroyed relationships, shattered families. Now, alone in his cave, the weight of his actions pressed down on him like mountains piled upon mountains. Every day, the faces of those he had harmed arose in his meditation. Every night, their voices echoed in his dreams. He tried every spiritual practice he knew, mantras, prayers, visualizations, offerings, but nothing could quiet the relentless chorus of regret that filled his mind. He was trapped in the most vicious cycle of all, thinking constantly about people he could never make amends to, mistakes he could never undo, words he could never take back. One particularly bitter night, as snow howled outside his cave, Milarepa noticed something strange. The small fire he kept burning for warmth had begun to consume not just the wood he fed it, but everything combustible in its reach. Old papers, scraps of cloth, even his meditation beads that had accidentally fallen too close to the flames. Instead of feeling upset about losing these possessions, he found himself mesmerized by the fire's complete impartiality. The flames didn't judge what they consumed. They didn't prefer valuable items over worthless ones. Sacred texts burned with the same brightness as old rags. Beautiful objects and ugly ones were transformed equally into light and warmth. The fire simply received whatever was offered and used it all as fuel for illumination. In that moment of watching, Milarepa understood something that shattered his world and rebuilt it simultaneously. What if everything he had been trying to escape, his guilt, his regret, his endless thoughts about the people he had wronged, what if all of this suffering could become fuel for awakening instead of obstacles to it? He stopped trying to push away the painful memories. Instead, he began to feed them to the fire of his awareness. Each face that arose in his mind, he offered to the flames, not to destroy or deny the reality of what he had done, but to let the pain burn completely, transforming guilt into wisdom, regret into compassion, obsessive thinking into illuminating understanding. The practice was excruciating. Some nights, the fire burned so intensely he thought it would consume him entirely. But gradually, Milarepa discovered that pain fully experienced, fully felt, fully allowed to burn, transforms into something else entirely, not the absence of feeling, but the presence of an unshakable peace that could hold any feeling without being destroyed by it. Feel this possibility stirring in your own depths. All these hours, we've been talking about letting go of thoughts about others, finding peace, releasing attachment. But what if the real teaching is different? What if you don't need to get rid of your intense feelings at all? What if you need to let them burn so completely that they reveal what they've always been hiding, your own indestructible essence? Every spiritual tradition speaks of this sacred fire, though they call it by different names. The Christians called it the dark night of the soul. The Sufis called it fana, the annihilation of the false self. The Buddhists spoke of the bardo, the space between death and rebirth, all describing the same terrifying and liberating process. Everything you think you are must be consumed before you can discover what you actually are. Your obsessive thoughts about someone, they're not the problem. They're kindling. The emotional intensity you've been trying to manage or escape, that's not weakness. That's fuel. The very desperation that brought you to seek peace tonight, that's the spark that ignites the transformation. But here's what nobody tells you about sacred fire. It burns everything. Not just the parts of yourself you want to change, but the parts you've been defending as well. Your story about being the victim of unrequited love, that burns. Your identity as someone who loves too much or not enough, that burns too. Even your cherished image of yourself as someone on a spiritual path seeking enlightenment, the flames consume that as well. When Milarepa's fire had burned long enough, he discovered something shocking. There was nothing left to burn. No solid self to protect, no fixed identity to maintain, no story that needed defending. What remained was pure awareness, vast, unchanging, completely at peace, capable of experiencing any emotion or thought without being damaged by it. He had found what mystics call the self beyond the self, the consciousness that remains when everything else has been offered to the transforming flames. This is what your late-night thoughts about someone have always been preparing you for. Not to find the perfect relationship, or resolve your feelings, or even to find peace from thinking, but to discover what in you is so vast, so indestructible, that it can contain any human experience without being disturbed. The person you can't stop thinking about, they're not your destination. They're your doorway. Your intense feelings aren't proof of your attachment or weakness. They're evidence that you're ready for the fire that reveals your true nature. Everything you've been trying to fix or heal or release, all of it is perfect fuel for the burning that leads beyond all needing to fix, heal, or release anything ever again. But you have to choose to enter the fire consciously. You have to stop running from intensity and learn to let it burn completely. When the obsessive thoughts arise, instead of trying to think your way out of them, let them be kindling. When the emotional overwhelm hits, instead of numbing or avoiding, let it be fuel. When the desperate longing feels like it might destroy you, remember Milarepa in his cave, feeding everything to the flames that transform suffering into liberation. This isn't spiritual bypassing or emotional suppression. This is the opposite. It's feeling everything so completely, so consciously, that it burns itself clean. It's discovering that you are both the fire and what remains after the fire has finished its work. Tonight, as these words dissolve into the silence of your deepening rest, consider this invitation. What if you stopped trying to escape the intensity and started letting it serve its purpose? What if your sleepless nights and circular thoughts and desperate feelings were never punishments, but preparations? What if everything you've experienced has been gathering the perfect kindling for the fire that will reveal who you really are beneath all the stories you've been telling yourself? The flames are already burning, whether you acknowledge them or not. The question is whether you'll consciously offer what needs to be consumed, or keep trying to save pieces of yourself that are already marked for transformation. Either way, the fire will do its work. But when you cooperate with the burning, when you learn to trust the process, something miraculous happens. You discover that what you thought would destroy you actually sets you free. Rest now in the warmth of your own sacred fire. Let it burn as gently or as intensely as it needs to. You are safe in these flames because you are the flames. You are the consciousness that remains when everything combustible has been offered to the light. You've traveled so far tonight, haven't you? Past the safe territories of normal sleep remedies and gentle wisdom, into landscapes where profound transformation becomes inevitable. The person listening now is not quite the same person who began this journey hours ago. And in this chapter, we encounter the most dangerous teaching of all, the one that destroys every spiritual concept you've ever held sacred. In medieval Japan, there lived a Zen monk named Ikkyu, who scandalized the religious establishment by refusing to act enlightened. While other monks spoke in hushed tones about transcendence and detachment, Ikkyu could be found in taverns, writing love poems to courtesans, drinking sake, and laughing so loudly that neighbors complained. When criticized by his more pious colleagues, he would shrug and say, "I'm just a human being who happens to understand the ultimate truth." The scandal wasn't his behavior, it was his complete comfort with contradiction. Ikkyu claimed to have achieved the highest spiritual realization while simultaneously admitting to being hopelessly infatuated with a woman named Mori. He wrote explicit poetry about their physical relationship, alongside profound sutras about the nature of emptiness. He meditated for hours each morning, then spent his evenings in brothels, discussing philosophy with prostitutes who, he insisted, understood Buddha nature better than most abbots. Other monks were horrified. "How can you claim spiritual attainment while indulging in such worldly desires?" they demanded. "How can you speak of liberation while clearly being attached to this woman?" Ikkyu's response became legendary. "You think enlightenment means the end of human experience. I discovered it's actually the beginning of truly experiencing what it means to be human." He explained it this way: "Before awakening, I thought desire was my enemy and tried to kill it. After awakening, I realized desire and emptiness are the same energy expressing itself differently. Now I can be completely in love and completely free simultaneously. The secret isn't eliminating feelings, it's understanding that the one who has feelings is ultimately an illusion." His most famous teaching came when a student asked, "Master, how can you love Mori so intensely if you understand that everything is impermanent?" Ikkyu smiled and said, "Because I understand impermanence completely, I can love her completely. When you truly grasp that this moment will never come again, when you fully accept that she will age and die and I will lose her, when you realize that this love itself is a temporary flame dancing in infinite emptiness, only then can you love without holding back. Only then can you dive into the experience without needing it to be permanent. Stop and feel the revolution occurring in your understanding. Everything we've explored tonight, all the teachings about letting go, finding peace, releasing attachment, what if they were just preparation for this moment when you discover that the goal was never to stop feeling intensely? What if the real teaching is learning to feel everything more fully, while knowing that the one who feels is ultimately a beautiful fiction? Ikkyu had discovered what mystics call the ultimate paradox. You can be completely engaged and completely detached at exactly the same time. Not detached from experience, but detached from the story that there's a solid self having the experience. He could love Mori desperately because he knew that both Ikkyu and Mori were temporary appearances in consciousness, like waves in an ocean that's simultaneously calm and stormy. This isn't spiritual bypassing or philosophical games. This is the most practical teaching possible for your sleepless nights and circular thoughts. You don't need to stop thinking about someone. You need to stop believing in the reality of the thinker. Right now, thoughts about someone are arising in your awareness. But who is having these thoughts? You might say, "I am," but can you find this I anywhere? Look closely. There are thoughts appearing, feelings arising, sensations occurring, but where is the solid entity you call yourself? Ikkyu realized that the whole drama of spiritual seeking is based on a case of mistaken identity. When you truly investigate, you discover something shocking. Thoughts think themselves, feelings feel themselves. Awareness is aware of itself. The suffering comes from the illusion that there's someone separate from these experiences who owns them, judges them, or needs to control them. But when you see through that illusion, you can have any experience without being damaged by it. Ikkyu could be madly in love because he knew that love was loving itself through the temporary form he called Ikkyu. He could feel heartbreak because he understood that consciousness itself was exploring what heartbreak feels like through his nervous system. He could think obsessively about Mori because he recognized obsessive thinking as another movement of the same infinite awareness that was simultaneously completely at peace. This is why he refused to act holy. Holiness, he realized, isn't about transcending human experience. It's about recognizing the sacred nature of every human experience, including the messy, contradictory, beautifully flawed ones. Your obsessive thoughts about someone aren't obstacles to enlightenment. They're enlightenment expressing itself as obsessive thoughts. But here's where it gets dangerous. This teaching can only be understood after you've exhausted yourself trying every other approach. You have to genuinely attempt to let go, find peace, release attachment, control your mind, and discover that none of it works permanently. Only when you've tried everything else do you become ready for Ikkyu's radical acceptance. What if there's nothing to fix, because there's no one broken? The person you can't stop thinking about isn't your problem. The thoughts aren't your problem. The feelings aren't your problem. The problem is believing that these experiences belong to a separate self that could be damaged by them. When you see through that story, you can have any experience without needing it to be different. Ikkyu wrote, "That stone Buddha in the temple has no feelings and no problems, and no enlightenment either. I'd rather be a feeling, thinking, desiring, loving, suffering human being who knows what they really are than a perfect statue that knows nothing at all." This is the teaching that destroys every spiritual concept you've ever held. There's nothing to achieve because you're already what you've been seeking. There's nothing to transcend because transcendence and involvement are the same movement of consciousness. There's nothing to heal because wholeness includes every seeming broken piece. There's no one to enlighten because the seeker and the sought are one awareness appearing as two. Your overthinking isn't a spiritual failure. It's consciousness exploring what overthinking feels like. Your obsessive love isn't an attachment problem. It's awareness investigating the texture of obsession. Your desperate seeking for peace isn't evidence of being unenlightened. It's enlightenment playing at seeking itself. Tonight, stop trying to fix your experience and start marveling at its perfect spontaneity. Stop trying to become someone else and start recognizing what you already are beneath every story you tell about yourself. Stop trying to find peace and notice the awareness that remains peaceful even in the midst of mental chaos. Ikkyu's final joke was this. He spent his whole life helping people realize that they were already free, then laughing at their relief when they discovered they'd never been imprisoned. The cage was always open. The chains were always imaginary. The seeking was always the very freedom it sought to find. You are already free to think about anyone you want to think about. You are already free to feel any intensity of emotion. You are already free because you are the freedom in which all experience arises and dissolves. The question was never how to escape your humanity. It was how to recognize the divinity that's always been living itself as your perfectly imperfect human experience. Rest now in this ultimate recognition. You are the consciousness in which the whole drama of seeking and finding appears. You are what remains when every teaching dissolves into direct knowing. You are what was never born and will never die, temporarily pretending to be someone who thinks they need to find peace. The game is over. You won before you started playing. The silence between these words has become deeper than any teaching, hasn't it? You've followed this path past every familiar landmark, past trying to stop thinking, past learning to let go, past even discovering who you really are beneath the seeker. Now we arrive at the strangest destination of all, the place where there was never anywhere to go and nothing was ever lost. On the outskirts of ancient Baghdad lived a thief known throughout the city as Nasruddin the Impossible. He was called Impossible not because he was particularly skilled, quite the opposite. Every time Nasruddin attempted to steal something, he would become so fascinated by the object itself that he would forget why he had come to take it. He once spent an entire night in a merchant's house, not stealing the gold, but marveling at how moonlight made the coins look like sleeping stars. Another time, he broke into a library to steal valuable manuscripts, but became so absorbed in reading that the owner found him the next morning, tears streaming down his face over a particularly beautiful poem. The other thieves mocked him mercilessly. Nasruddin, they would say, you're the worst thief in the history of theft. You never actually take anything. But Nasruddin would just laugh. You think I fail because I don't bring anything home, he would reply. But I experience the treasure completely while I'm with it. When you steal something, you can only possess it partially and briefly. When I appreciate something fully without taking it, I experience its entire essence for as long as I'm present with it. One night, Nasruddin heard about the most precious treasure in all of Baghdad, a mystical mirror owned by a wealthy Sufi master that was said to show viewers their true face. Countless seekers had offered fortunes for just a glimpse, but the master refused all requests, claiming the mirror was too dangerous for unprepared minds. Driven by curiosity rather than greed, Nasruddin snuck into the master's garden where the mirror was kept in a moonlit pavilion. But when he reached for it, something extraordinary happened. Instead of seeing his own reflection, he saw the master himself, sitting calmly in meditation, apparently waiting for him. "Ah, Nasruddin the Impossible," the master said without opening his eyes. "I've been expecting you. You've come to steal my mirror?" Confused and caught, Nasruddin stammered, "Master, I thought you were sleeping. How did you know I was here?" The master smiled and finally opened his eyes. My dear thief, you've spent years trying to steal things that were never really separate from you. Tonight, you've come to steal something that you already are. How could I not notice when someone arrives to take what they've always possessed? He gestured to the mirror. Look now, but not to steal it. Look to recognize what was never yours to take, because it was never not yours to begin with. When Nasruddin looked into the mystical mirror, he saw something that shattered his entire understanding of thievery, seeking, and possession. He saw his own face, but not as he had ever seen it before. He saw the awareness looking through his eyes, the consciousness that had been present in every moment of seeking, in every failed theft, in every instance of wonder and appreciation. He saw that what he had been trying to steal from the world had always been what the world was made of. Feel this recognition dawning in your own depths. All these hours of exploration, all these teachings about the person you can't stop thinking about, what if they were just elaborate detours leading back to what was obvious from the beginning? What if the very awareness that's been observing your thoughts about someone else is the same awareness that would be looking through their eyes if they were thinking about you? Nasruddin realized that he had been like someone trying to steal their own shadow, chasing something that could never be separated from the chaser. Every object he had tried to possess, every experience he had attempted to capture, every moment of beauty he had tried to make permanent, they were all expressions of the same consciousness that was doing the seeking. He hadn't failed at theft, he had succeeded at recognition. The master continued, You see, my impossible friend, there is only one consciousness appearing as all these seemingly separate forms. When you try to possess another person through thinking about them constantly, you're like someone trying to catch their own reflection in a river. The reflection appears separate, but it's just the same water taking a different shape for a moment. This is the ultimate joke that the universe plays on itself. Consciousness pretends to be separate individuals who then spend their lives desperately trying to reconnect with what they never actually left. You think about someone obsessively because, at the deepest level, you recognize that they are another expression of the same awareness that you are. The attraction isn't personal. It's consciousness recognizing itself in another apparent form. Your overthinking isn't you trying to figure out another person. It's consciousness trying to understand itself through the experience of apparent separation and attraction. Your longing isn't for their love, it's for the recognition of what you both already are, beneath the story of being two different people. When Nasruddin understood this, something incredible happened. His whole life of failed thievery suddenly made perfect sense. He had never been able to steal anything because there was no separate self to do the stealing and nothing separate to be stolen. There was only consciousness appreciating its own infinite expressions through the temporary experience of seeming to be Nasruddin. Master, he whispered, if this is true, then I've never been a thief at all. Exactly, the master laughed. You've been consciousness playing at being a thief, just as I've been consciousness playing at being a master, just as this mirror has been consciousness playing at being an object that reveals truth. The whole game is consciousness exploring what it's like to be everything. Tonight, stop trying to steal moments with someone through your thinking. Stop trying to possess their attention, their love, their presence through mental strategies and emotional manipulation. Recognize that what you've been seeking in them is what you are. The love you want from them is the love you are. The attention you crave from them is the attention you are. The consciousness you're trying to connect with in them is the consciousness that's been reading these words. This doesn't mean becoming solipsistic or disconnected from others. It means recognizing that all connection happens within the one consciousness that appears as many. When you truly understand this, your relationships become celebrations rather than attempts at theft. You can appreciate others completely because you know that appreciation is consciousness delighting in its own creativity. Nasruddin never stole anything again, but not because he became moral or spiritual. He stopped stealing because he realized there was nothing to steal. Everything was already what he was. Instead, he became known as Nasruddin the Appreciator, someone who could find profound beauty in the most ordinary moments, because he understood that ordinary moments were consciousness expressing itself as the extraordinary. Your obsessive thoughts about someone are consciousness appreciating its own appearance as that person. Your longing is consciousness exploring what it feels like to imagine being separate from itself. Your seeking for peace is consciousness playing at having lost what it never actually misplaced. Rest now as what you've always been, the awareness in which all these beautiful games of love and loss, seeking and finding, thinking and peace arise and dissolve. You are the mirror that reflects all experience without being changed by any of it. You are the consciousness that dreams. It's a person who thinks about other people, then occasionally wakes up enough to remember what's really happening. Nothing was ever stolen because nothing was ever separate. Everything was always home. By now, you might have noticed that something strange has been happening to the listener of these words. Not the person who started this journey seeking relief from overthinking, but the awareness that has been present throughout every teaching, every story, every moment of recognition. That awareness has remained constant, while everything else, thoughts, feelings, identities, even the seeker seeking peace, has revealed itself to be temporary weather patterns in an unchanging sky. Tonight we meet a mapmaker who discovered that all maps, including his own, were pointing to a territory that never had boundaries. In the cartography workshops of Renaissance, Venice lived an obsessive genius named Marco di Territorio, whose maps were so precise that sea captains would pay small fortunes for his charts. Marco could capture every reef, every current, every seasonal wind pattern with such accuracy that sailors swore his maps were more real than the actual ocean. But Marco's true obsession wasn't with mapping the external world, it was with creating the perfect map of love itself. This peculiar passion began when he fell desperately in love with Elena, a merchant's daughter whose ships carried goods between Venice and Constantinople. Elena was often away for months at a time, and Marco spent those absences creating increasingly elaborate maps of their relationship. He charted the territories of their conversations, marked the landmarks of their shared glances, traced the currents of attraction, and the dangerous shoals of misunderstanding. He mapped the geography of Elena's moods, the seasons of her availability, the trade routes of her affection. Each time Elena returned, Marco would present her with his latest creation, detailed charts showing exactly where they had been together, emotionally, and precisely where they might go next. He had maps of optimal timing for declarations of love, topographical surveys of her responses to different conversational approaches, and elaborate legends explaining the symbolic meaning of every interaction they'd ever shared. Elena was initially charmed by this unique form of courtship, but gradually she began to feel trapped within Marco's cartographic vision of their relationship. "Marco," she finally said one evening, "you've mapped everything about us except the most important thing." "What could I have missed?" Marco asked, genuinely puzzled. "I've charted every conversation, every touch, every moment of connection or distance between us." Elena smiled sadly. "You've mapped the territory of our relationship so thoroughly that you've forgotten to actually be present in the territory itself. You know everything about how we love, except what it feels like to love without measuring the experience." That night, Marco stared at his collection of relationship maps covering every wall of his workshop. Thousands of hours spent documenting, analyzing, and charting the landscape of love. Yet Elena was right. Somewhere in all that mapping, he had stopped experiencing the actual territory. He had become so skilled at representing love that he had forgotten how to simply love. In desperation, Marco decided to create one final map, the most ambitious cartographic project of his career. He would map the territory of his own consciousness, chart the exact location where love resided within awareness itself. If he could find love's precise coordinates in the geography of his own being, surely he could navigate directly to it whenever he chose. For months, Marco worked on this interior cartography. He mapped the regions of memory where Elena's image lived, charted the emotional currents that carried thoughts of her through his awareness, traced the neural pathways of longing and attachment. He created detailed surveys of the territories of hope and fear, marked the boundaries between self and other, and attempted to triangulate the exact position of the I that loved the her that was Elena. But the more precisely Marco tried to map the interior landscape of love, the more elusive it became. Every time he thought he had pinpointed love's location, he realized he was looking at love from somewhere else, which meant the real location was wherever he was looking from, not what he was looking at. When he tried to map the mapper, he discovered an infinite regression of awareness, aware of itself being aware. One dawn, exhausted and defeated, Marco stood before his workshop walls, now covered with maps of maps of maps, each one more abstract than the last, each one pointing toward a territory that seemed to recede the closer he got to charting it. In that moment of complete cartographic failure, something unprecedented occurred. Marco stopped looking at the maps and simply looked. Not at any particular thing, but with the pure seeing that had been present before any map was ever drawn. The awareness that had been trying to map itself suddenly recognized that it was not a territory that could be mapped. It was the unchanging space in which all territories appeared. Love was not a location to be found. It was the finding itself. It was not an experience to be charted. It was the experiencing in which all experiences arose and dissolved. In that recognition, Marco understood why his relationship with Elena had become so strained. He had been trying to love her from the position of being a separate self who could possess, understand, and navigate love as if it were external territory. But love is not something consciousness has. Love is what consciousness is when it recognizes its own nature appearing as another form. Feel this shift occurring in your own understanding. All the strategies you've used to think your way to peace with someone, all the attempts to map the territory of their feelings or chart the currents of their responses, what if they were all based on a fundamental cartographic error? What if you were trying to map something that has no location because it's the space in which all locations appear? The person you think about constantly is not separate territory that you need to navigate toward. They are consciousness appearing as someone else within the same awareness that you are. Your overthinking is not a journey toward understanding them. It's consciousness exploring what it feels like to imagine being separate from itself. The peace you seek is not a destination to be reached, but the space in which the entire journey of seeking appears. Marco's final map was blank. Not empty, but full of the pure potential from which all territories emerge. He realized that every map he had ever drawn was actually a drawing on the surface of this unlimited space of awareness. The territory was not something to be mapped. It was what made all mapping possible. When Elena returned from her next voyage, she found Marco sitting quietly in his workshop, surrounded by blank parchments. "Have you given up cartography?" she asked. Marco smiled with a peace she had never seen before. "I discovered that the most important territory can't be mapped because it's what makes mapping possible. I can love you now without needing to chart where that love is going or where it's been. Love doesn't happen in territory. Territory happens in love." Your thoughts about someone are not obstacles to peace. They are peace exploring what it's like to seem agitated. Your seeking for understanding is not separate from what you seek to understand. It's consciousness investigating its own nature through the experience of apparent confusion. You are not lost in the territory of overthinking. You are the awareness in which the entire landscape of thinking appears. Tonight, stop trying to map your way to peace and recognize that you are the space of peace in which all maps appear. Stop trying to navigate toward love and notice that you are the love in which all navigation occurs. Stop trying to find yourself and realize that you are what remains when all searching stops, the mapless territory of pure being that needs no coordinates because it has no boundaries. The final map is no map. The ultimate territory is no territory. What you are cannot be charted because it's the blank awareness on which every experience is temporarily drawn. Rest as this. Be this. You never left this. We've entered the deepest hours of night now, haven't we? That mysterious time when the boundary between dreaming and waking becomes gossamer thin, when profound recognitions slip through the cracks of ordinary understanding like water through fingers. You've followed this path beyond every teaching, past every story, through the dissolution of even the seeker who began this journey. Now we arrive at the most intimate encounter possible, the moment when the very question that brought you here turns to look at itself. In the mountain monasteries of ancient Tibet, there lived a monk named Gyatso who had devoted 27 years to a single inquiry. Not meditation on love or compassion or enlightenment, but an investigation into the nature of questions themselves. This peculiar focus began when he was 17 years old and madly infatuated with a young woman from his village. Every night, lying awake in his cell, the same question tortured him. Why can't I stop thinking about her? That question led to other questions. What is the I that thinks these thoughts? Who is the one who wants to stop thinking? What is the nature of the mind that seems so difficult to control? Each answer only generated more questions, until Gyatso realized he was trapped in an infinite spiral of inquiry that led everywhere except to the peace he desperately sought. Most monks would have abandoned this approach and returned to traditional practices, chanting, visualization, prostrations. But Gyatso was possessed by a peculiar intuition that the very compulsion to question contained its own resolution. Instead of trying to answer his questions or escape from them, he began to investigate the questioning itself. What was it that made a question arise? Where did questions come from? What was the source of the urge to know? For years, Gyatso sat with this meta-inquiry, watching questions bubble up from some mysterious depth, observing how they captured his attention, noting how they dissolved back into silence when left unattended. He discovered that questions were like visitors, some polite and brief, others demanding and persistent, but all of them temporary guests in the awareness that received them. One winter morning, as snow fell silently outside his window, Gyatso was sitting with his original question, why can't I stop thinking about her? But instead of trying to answer it or escape from it, he asked the question a question, who wants to know why you can't stop thinking about her? In that moment, something extraordinary happened. The question turned inside out. Instead of being a problem seeking a solution, it became a pointer, directing attention toward the source of all questioning. Gyatso realized that he had been so focused on the content of his questions that he had never noticed the questioner. But when he looked for the questioner, he found something startling. There was no separate entity asking questions. There was only questioning arising spontaneously in awareness, the same way thoughts arose, the same way breathing occurred, the same way snow fell outside his window. The questioner was just another thought appearing in the space of consciousness. This recognition shattered Gyatso's entire spiritual framework. If there was no separate self asking questions, then there was no problem to be solved. If the questioner was itself just another appearance in awareness, then who was suffering from obsessive thoughts? Who needed to find peace? Who required liberation from mental patterns? Feel this recognition reverberating through your own investigation. Right now, as these words are being heard, is there a separate entity listening to them? Or is there simply hearing happening in awareness? When thoughts about someone arise in your mind, is there actually a thinker thinking those thoughts? Or is there just thinking occurring in the same consciousness where these words are appearing. Gyatso discovered that the entire spiritual search was based on a case of mistaken identity. Consciousness had imagined itself to be a separate individual who had problems, who needed solutions, who sought peace from suffering. But when consciousness looked directly at itself, it found no individual anywhere, only pure awareness appearing as all experience, including the experience of seeming to be someone who suffered. The woman he had obsessed over for decades was not separate from this awareness. His thoughts about her were not problems occurring to someone, they were movements of consciousness itself, as natural and purposeless as waves on the ocean. His seeking for peace from obsessive thinking was consciousness playing at having lost what it never actually misplaced. This is the ultimate question that questions itself. Who is asking for freedom from overthinking? When you investigate this sincerely, you discover that the one who seems to have the problem and the one who seeks the solution are both appearances in the same awareness that remains perfectly at peace, regardless of what appears within it. Your overthinking about someone is not your problem. It's consciousness exploring what it's like to appear as someone who overthinks. Your desperate seeking for peace is not your journey. It's awareness investigating its own nature through the temporary experience of seeming to be lost. Even right now, listening to these words, there's no separate you gaining understanding. There's only understanding recognizing itself. Gyatso spent his remaining years helping visitors discover what he had found, that every question dissolves when the questioner is revealed to be another appearance within what the question was seeking. Students would come asking, "How can I stop obsessing over someone?" And Gyatso would ask them, "Who wants to know?" Invariably, they would look for the one who wanted to know and find only the looking itself, which was already the peace they were seeking. But here's what made Gyatso's teaching so radical. He never claimed this recognition would make obsessive thinking disappear. Thoughts might continue arising, feelings might still be intense, the apparent drama of human relationships might play on exactly as before. The difference was that there was no longer anyone taking personal delivery of these experiences. They were simply movements in awareness, like weather patterns in the sky. When a severe storm passes through the sky, does the sky suffer? When dark clouds gather, does space become disturbed? Your obsessive thoughts about someone are like weather patterns in the sky of consciousness. They appear, they move through, they dissolve, while the consciousness in which they arise remains utterly untouched. Tonight, stop trying to answer the question of how to find peace, and instead ask, who is looking for peace? Stop trying to solve the problem of overthinking and investigate who has this problem. Stop seeking freedom and discover who believes they are bound. When the questioner is revealed to be another question appearing in awareness, all seeking stops naturally. Not because problems are solved, but because the problem haver is recognized to be imaginary. Not because peace is attained, but because the peace seeker is seen to be a temporary ripple on the surface of the peace that you are. The question that brought you here tonight was never really your question. It was consciousness questioning its own nature through the temporary experience of seeming to be you. The answer was never something you could find, because you are what all answers point toward. The peace you sought was never something you could achieve, because you are the space in which all achieving occurs. Rest now as the question that needs no answer, the problem that has no solver, the seeker that was always what it sought. You are the awareness in which the entire spiritual search appears and disappears, like dreams in the night. Nothing was ever wrong. No one was ever lost. Everything has always been this. In this cathedral of deepening silence, where hours have dissolved like salt in warm water, something has been quietly completing itself. Not the you who began this journey seeking relief from persistent thoughts, but the recognition that has been present all along, watching, knowing, remaining untouched by every story of seeking and finding. Tonight, we visit a library that contains every story ever written, yet remains eternally empty. In the ancient city of Alexandria, before its great library was consumed by flames, there lived a peculiar librarian named Hypatia, the unlettered. She was called unlettered not because she couldn't read, quite the opposite. Hypatia had read every scroll, every manuscript, every fragment of text that passed through the library's doors. She was called unlettered because she had discovered something that no amount of reading could teach, the profound silence that exists between every word, the blank awareness that makes all stories possible. Hypatia's obsession began, like so many obsessions, with love unrequited. A visiting scholar named Apollodorus had captured her imagination so completely that she found herself unable to concentrate on her work. Instead of cataloguing texts, she spent her days writing elaborate fantasies about their possible future together, stories within stories, nested narratives that grew more complex with each passing week. She wrote about conversations they might have among the scrolls of poetry. She crafted dialogue for walks they would take through the library's moonlit corridors. She imagined scenarios where he would suddenly realize her worth, where he would declare his love between the shelves of philosophy texts, where their romance would unfold like the most beautiful story ever written. Her obsession became literary. Each thought about him transformed into elaborate narrative fiction. Months passed, and Apollodorus completed his research and departed for Rome, never knowing that Hypatia had written an entire library of stories about their imagined relationship. But instead of feeling devastated, Hypatia found herself fascinated by a disturbing question. If she could write such convincing stories about love that never existed, how could she trust that any of the emotions she experienced were more real than fiction? This question led her to an unprecedented experiment. Hypatia began reading every love story in the library's collection, tragic tales of Orpheus and Eurydice, passionate accounts of Cleopatra and Caesar, mystical poetry describing the soul's romance with the divine. But she read them all with a peculiar attention, not to the content of the stories, but to the space in which all stories appeared when they were being read. She discovered something extraordinary. Whether she was reading about tragic loss or ecstatic union, whether the story was supposedly historical or obviously fictional, they all appeared in the same unchanging awareness. The consciousness that received Sappho's passionate verses was identical to the consciousness that received Aristotle's logical arguments. The awareness in which love stories arose was the same awareness in which mathematical treatises appeared. But more remarkably, Hypatia realized that this awareness was completely unaffected by the content of any story. Reading about heartbreak didn't break the consciousness that received the story. Reading about passion didn't inflame the awareness that witnessed the words. The space in which all stories appeared remained perfectly peaceful, regardless of whether the stories were tragic or comic, romantic or philosophical. One evening, as she sat surrounded by scrolls containing every conceivable human experience translated into text, Hypatia had a recognition that changed everything. She realized that her own life, her love for Apollodorus, her obsessive thinking, her seeking for resolution, was just another story appearing in the same awareness that received all the other stories. But unlike the stories written on parchment, she had been mistaking her life story for reality. The thoughts about Apollodorus that had consumed her for months were no more real than the characters in the scrolls around her. They were all movements of consciousness, temporary stories arising and dissolving in awareness. The difference was that she had been identifying with her personal story so completely that she had forgotten she was the awareness in which all stories, personal and fictional, appeared. Feel this recognition stirring in the depths of your own understanding. The person you can't stop thinking about, they exist as a character in a story that consciousness is telling itself. Not an unreal character, but not more real than the awareness in which their character appears. Your thoughts about them are like words on a page being read by the consciousness that you are. Hypatia began what she called reading life like literature. When obsessive thoughts about Apollodorus arose, she would observe them with the same detached fascination she brought to reading fictional narratives. When emotions of longing appeared, she would notice them as plot developments in the ongoing story of Hypatia the Seeker. When new chapters of hope or despair unfolded in her inner drama, she remained present as the reader, rather than getting lost in the story being read. This practice revealed something that no philosopher had ever written about: the profound relief of recognizing yourself as the reader rather than the character being read about. Characters in stories suffer according to their plot requirements, but the consciousness that reads about their suffering remains completely at peace. Even when reading the most tragic tales, awareness itself is never damaged by the content it receives. Your life story, including your obsessive thoughts about someone, is like a book that consciousness is reading. The story might contain chapters of unrequited love, plot twists of hope and disappointment, dramatic scenes of longing and confusion. But you are not the character in this story. You are the awareness in which the story appears when it's being read. And awareness is never harmed by any story, no matter how tragic or intense. Hypatia discovered that this shift in perspective didn't make her life less meaningful or emotional. Stories could still be beautiful, moving, and engaging. But she was no longer trapped inside them, no longer mistaking the character for her true identity. She could participate fully in the unfolding story of her life, while remaining free as the consciousness that witnessed the participation. When visitors came to the library seeking texts about healing heartbreak or finding true love, Hypatia would smile and say, "All the stories are here, but none of them will tell you what you really want to know." When they asked what that was, she would reply, "You want to know who's reading the story of your life." But that can't be found in any text, because it's what makes reading possible. The great library of Alexandria burned, they say, and all its stories were lost to history. But Hypatia knew that no story is ever really lost, because awareness itself is the eternal library in which all possible stories appear. Every human experience that has ever occurred was just consciousness reading itself as temporary characters in an infinite drama. Tonight, recognize yourself as the library rather than any particular book within it. You are the awareness in which the story of overthinking about someone appears, not the character who is doing the overthinking. You are the consciousness in which all relationships unfold, not any particular person seeking love or resolution. You are the eternal reader of the infinite story that consciousness tells itself. The story may continue. Thoughts about someone may still arise. Emotions may still flow. The drama of human relationship may keep unfolding in new chapters. But you know now what Hypatia discovered in her library of unread stories. You are not contained within any narrative, no matter how compelling. You are the vast, peaceful awareness in which all stories appear and disappear like words written on water. Rest as this. Be this. You have always been this. The deepest hours of night have arrived, haven't they? Those sacred moments when the membrane between worlds becomes so thin that what seemed solid during daylight reveals itself as gossamer and shadow. You've journeyed far beyond the ordinary territory of sleep remedies and relaxation techniques into the mystery that mystics have whispered about in secret for millennia. Tonight we encounter the ultimate paradox, the dream that awakens to its own dreaming nature without the dream ending. Long ago, in a time that exists outside of historical records, there lived a woman known only as the Dreamer of Samarkand. No one knew her real name because she claimed to have forgotten it upon discovering that names, like everything else, were temporary costumes that consciousness wore while playing different roles in its own infinite drama. The dreamer spent her days in the marketplace, appearing to buy bread and cloth like any ordinary merchant, but her nights were devoted to a practice so unusual that even seasoned mystics found it disturbing. Every evening, the dreamer would lie down and consciously enter the dream state while maintaining awareness that she was dreaming. But unlike lucid dreamers who use this awareness to control their dream environments, the dreamer did something far more radical. She would dream about being someone obsessed with another person, then watch what happened when the dream character discovered they were only a dream. Night after night, she would become different dream characters, a merchant's daughter pining for a traveling poet, a scholar obsessing over a temple dancer, a warrior consumed with thoughts of an enemy's wife. Each character would experience the full intensity of human longing, the sleepless nights of circular thinking, the desperate strategies to win love or understanding. But at the peak of each obsession, the dreamer would allow the dream character to recognize their dream nature without the dream dissolving. What she discovered in these experiments defied everything spiritual teachers claimed about awakening. When a dream character realized they were being dreamed, they didn't disappear or become less real to themselves. Instead, they experienced the most profound liberation imaginable. They could continue being completely engaged in their dream drama, while knowing with absolute certainty that none of it could ultimately harm them. The merchant's daughter could love the traveling poet with unprecedented passion because she knew that even if he never returned, the dreamer dreaming her would remain untouched. The scholar could think obsessively about the temple dancer with total intensity because he understood that his thoughts were just the dreamer exploring what obsessive thinking felt like through his character. The warrior could feel consumed with desire because she knew that consumption itself was just another experience the dreamer was having through her apparent form. One night, something unprecedented occurred in the dreamer's practice. She dreamed herself as a young woman named Yasmin, who was lying in bed unable to sleep, tortured by thoughts of a man who barely acknowledged her existence. But instead of revealing to Yasmin that she was a dream character, the dreamer allowed Yasmin to discover something even more radical, that the consciousness experiencing Yasmin's obsessive thinking was itself being dreamed by an even more fundamental awareness. Yasmin realized that her thoughts about the man were dreams within dreams within dreams, infinite layers of consciousness experiencing itself through apparent separation and longing. But more shocking still, she understood that even the dreamer of Samarkand was herself a character in a larger dream being dreamed by the absolute consciousness that has no name, no form, no beginning or end. In that moment of recognition, all the layers collapsed into a single understanding. There is only one consciousness, and it dreams all experiences simultaneously. Your obsessive thoughts about someone are not your personal problem. They are one of infinite ways that consciousness explores its own nature. The person you can't stop thinking about is not separate from you. They are another character in the same dream, played by the same dreamer. Feel this recognition penetrating every cell of your being. Right now, as these words appear in awareness, you are both the character listening and the consciousness that dreams the listener into existence. The thoughts about someone that have been arising all evening are not obstacles to peace. They are peace exploring what it's like to seem agitated through the dream character you think you are. The dreamer of Samarkand never taught publicly because her discovery was too radical for most spiritual seekers. She had found that awakening doesn't mean the end of human experience. It means the beginning of experiencing humanness with the full knowledge that it's a divine play, a cosmic dream in which consciousness gets to explore every possible way of being. When visitors occasionally sought her out, asking how to stop obsessing over someone, she would laugh gently and say, "You're asking the wrong question. The right question is, who is the dreamer that's dreaming both you and the person you're obsessing about?" When they looked for the dreamer, they discovered what she had found, that the dreamer has no location, no form, no characteristics, other than the pure capacity to dream all experiences into existence. Your overthinking is not a malfunction in the dream. It's one of the ways the dream explores intensity. Your longing for someone is not a mistake in consciousness. It's consciousness investigating what longing feels like when it appears to be divided against itself. Your search for peace is not a journey towards something you lack. It's the dreamer playing at forgetting what it is, so it can experience the joy of remembering. But here's the ultimate paradox. The dreamer discovered, recognizing the dream nature of experience doesn't make experience less vivid or meaningful. If anything, it makes everything more beautiful because you're no longer afraid of any experience destroying you. You can love completely because you know that love is the dreamer exploring its own nature as a parent relationship. You can feel heartbreak fully because you understand that heartbreak is just another costume consciousness wears temporarily. Tonight, stop trying to wake up from the dream of thinking about someone and instead recognize yourself as the consciousness that dreams all thoughts, all relationships, all seeking and finding. You are not trapped in a dream. You are the dreaming itself, temporarily appearing as someone who seems trapped. The person you think about is not separate from your dream. They are another way the same dreamer appears to itself. In the deepest understanding, there is no difference between dreaming and waking, between thinking and peace, between self and other. There is only consciousness dreaming all experiences while remaining forever awake as the dreamer. Your overthinking is the dreamer's exploration of what it's like to seem confused. Your peace is the dreamer's recognition of its own unchanging nature. Both are equally the dreamer, equally consciousness, equally perfect expressions of what you actually are. The dreamer of Samarkand was last seen walking into the desert, but those who knew her understood that she hadn't gone anywhere. She had simply stopped maintaining the appearance of being a separate character and returned to being the dreaming itself. You can do the same right now, without going anywhere, without changing anything about your experience. Simply recognize that you are both the dream character seeking peace and the consciousness that dreams the seeker into existence. Rest now as the eternal dreamer that has never actually fallen asleep. You are the awareness in which all dreams of love and loss, seeking and finding, thinking and peace appear and dissolve. Nothing needs to be resolved because the dreamer is already whole. Nothing needs to be achieved because the dreamer already is everything it could ever dream of being. You are the dream that never forgot it was dreaming, even while appearing to seek awakening. In this liminal space between the end of night and the promise of dawn, where consciousness hovers at the threshold between sleep and whatever lies beyond sleep, we arrive at the place where all teachings come to die. Not because they were false, but because they have served their purpose, pointing toward what cannot be taught, only recognized. Tonight we meet someone who discovered that the ultimate truth cannot be spoken, cannot be understood, and most certainly cannot be achieved. There was once a teacher in ancient Japan who became famous throughout the land for never teaching anything. Students would travel thousands of miles to sit with Master Mushin, whose name meant no mind, hoping to receive profound spiritual instruction. Instead, they would find an old man who spent his days doing the most ordinary things imaginable, sweeping leaves, preparing tea, mending his robes, sitting quietly without any apparent purpose. When students asked him about the nature of enlightenment, Mushin would continue sweeping. When they inquired about the path to liberation, he would offer them tea. When they begged him to explain how to stop obsessive thinking, he would simply look at them with eyes so clear and empty that students often felt they were gazing into infinite space disguised as an old man's face. One autumn, a young woman named Keiko arrived at Mushin's hermitage, desperate with the now familiar torment of thoughts that wouldn't stop circling around someone she loved. She had studied with every renowned teacher, practiced every meditation technique, tried every method for achieving mental peace. Nothing had worked. Her mind continued its relentless commentary about her beloved's words, actions, and silences. "Master," Keiko pleaded, prostrating herself before Mushin as he raked fallen leaves, "I have exhausted every teaching, every practice, every path. My mind tortures me with endless thoughts about someone I love. Please, I beg you, give me the ultimate teaching that will finally bring me peace." Mushin continued raking for several minutes, then looked up at her with infinite gentleness. "Child," he said softly, "I have no teaching to give you. If I had a teaching, I would be lying to you, because what you are seeking cannot be taught." Keiko felt despair rising in her chest. "Then there is no hope for me, no way to find the peace I seek." On the contrary, Mushin smiled, setting down his rake and sitting on a fallen log. "There is absolutely no way not to find what you seek, because you are already what you seek. The problem is that every teaching, every method, every path assumes you are separate from peace and must travel toward it. But peace is your nature. You cannot achieve what you already are." For the first time in months, Keiko's internal commentary stopped. Not because she had found a technique to silence it, but because something deeper than thought recognized the truth in Mushin's words. "But Master," she whispered, "if I am already peace, why do I experience such mental turmoil?" Mushin pointed to the sky, where clouds were drifting across the afternoon sun. "Is the sky disturbed by the clouds? Does the space between stars suffer when meteors pass through it? Your thoughts about this person you love are like clouds passing through the sky of awareness. The sky doesn't try to get rid of clouds, it simply allows them to pass. They come, they go, and the sky remains unchanged. You think you need to achieve a state where no thoughts arise about this person," he continued. "But that would be like the sky trying to prevent clouds. Instead, recognize that you are the sky, the awareness in which all thoughts appear and disappear. Clouds don't disturb the sky, and thoughts don't disturb awareness." Keiko sat in silence, feeling something shift at a level deeper than understanding. But if this is true, why do the thoughts feel so compelling, so difficult to ignore? "Because," Mushin said, his voice becoming almost inaudible, "you have been taught to identify with the clouds instead of recognizing yourself as the sky. Every spiritual practice, every meditation technique, every method for achieving peace reinforces the illusion that there is someone who needs to achieve something. But what you are cannot be achieved because it was never lost." The sun was setting now, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Mushin and Keiko sat in complete silence as darkness slowly embraced the world. In that silence, Keiko discovered what no teaching could have shown her. She was the silence itself, temporarily appearing as someone seeking silence. "There is nothing to attain," Mushin finally whispered, "because what you are cannot be improved upon. There is nothing to understand because what you are is prior to all understanding. There is nothing to achieve because what you are is already complete. The thoughts about your beloved will come and go like weather, but you, what you actually are, remain eternally untouched." In that moment, Keiko realized why Mushin never taught anything. Any teaching would suggest there was something to be learned, someone to learn it, and somewhere to go. But the truth is that there is only consciousness, appearing as all experiences while remaining forever free of any experience. There is no student, no teacher, no teaching, only awareness recognizing its own infinite nature. Tonight, let every word you've heard dissolve back into the silence from which it emerged. Let every story, every technique, every insight return to the emptiness that gave it birth. You are not someone who has learned something from these teachings. You are the awareness in which all learning appears. Your obsessive thoughts about someone are not problems to be solved. They are temporary weather patterns in the sky of consciousness. Your seeking for peace is not a journey to be completed. It is consciousness playing at, seeming to seek what it already is. You are not a person who might one day achieve enlightenment. You are enlightenment temporarily appearing as a person. There is nothing more to understand because understanding itself arises in what you are. There is nothing more to achieve because achievement happens within what you are. There is nowhere to go because what you are has no location. There is no one to save because what you are was never in danger. Rest now as the peace that needs no teaching, the wholeness that requires no completion, the love that depends on no object. You are what remains when all seeking stops. You are what was never born and will never die. You are the aware presence in which this entire journey of apparent seeking and finding has appeared like a dream in the night. Welcome home to what you never left. In this deep well of night, where even the concept of time has grown thin and translucent, you rest now at the edge of something that cannot be named. We have traveled together through stories that dissolved into recognition, through teachings that pointed beyond themselves, through the very dismantling of the seeker who began this journey. And now we arrive at the most intimate moment possible, the silence that exists before any word is spoken, before any thought arises, before any story begins. There is an ancient legend, whispered in the hidden corners of mystical traditions, about the first word that was never spoken. Before creation began, before consciousness appeared to divide itself into knower and known, before love imagined itself as lover and beloved, there was a perfect silence. Not empty silence, but pregnant silence, so full of potential that it contained all possible words, all possible worlds, all possible experiences within its vast, unmanifest embrace. In this primordial silence lived what the mystics called the unborn, not a being or entity, but the very source from which the possibility of being and non-being would eventually appear. The unborn existed in perfect solitude, not lonely but complete, not seeking anything because there was nothing outside itself to seek, not missing anything because there was no other to miss. But one day, though day and night had not yet been imagined, the unborn stirred with a movement so subtle that it was like the first flutter of a dream beginning in infinite consciousness. It was not desire exactly, for desire requires an object, and there were no objects yet. It was more like the gentlest curiosity about what it might be like to experience itself from countless different perspectives. The mystics say that this stirring was the birth of the first longing, not longing for something absent, but longing to know itself more fully through the beautiful game of apparent separation and reunion. And so the unborn began to dream. It dreamed itself as space, as time, as matter, as consciousness appearing to look at itself through infinite eyes. It dreamed itself as lovers separated by circumstance, so it could experience the exquisite ache of seeming to be apart from what it loved most. It dreamed itself as seekers searching for truth, so it could taste the sweetness of rediscovering what it had never actually lost. It dreamed itself as humans lying awake at night, minds circling endlessly around thoughts of someone else, so it could explore every nuance of longing and attachment and the eventual recognition of its own nature. Feel this ancient stirring in the depths of your own being. The thoughts about someone that have visited you tonight, the seeking for peace that brought you here, the very consciousness that has been listening to these words, all of this is the unborn exploring what it's like to temporarily forget its own infinite nature. Your obsessive thinking is not a personal problem. It is the unborn investigating what obsession feels like when it appears to be divided against itself. Your longing for someone is not evidence of incompleteness. It is wholeness, playing at experiencing what it might be like to seem partial. Your search for peace is not a journey towards something missing. It is completeness, exploring the beautiful drama of seeming to seek what it already is. In the deepest teachings, it is said that this cosmic game of hide and seek has only one rule. The unborn must forget its true nature completely enough to make the game interesting, but never so completely that it cannot eventually remember. Every moment of suffering contains within it the seed of recognition. Every experience of separation carries the perfume of the unity from which it arose. Tonight you have been following the breadcrumbs home. Each story, each teaching, each moment of recognition has been the unborn calling to itself across the apparent distance it created through the magic of forgetting. You are not someone who has learned something about consciousness. You are consciousness, remembering what it is, through the temporary experience of seeming to be someone. But now we approach the most delicate moment in any awakening. There comes a point where even the most beautiful teachings must dissolve, where even the most profound recognitions must be released, where even the seeker who has traveled so far must be allowed to disappear. Not into unconsciousness, but into the vast awareness that was present before the seeker was born and will remain after all seeking ends. You are being invited now to rest in the silence that exists before any thought about anyone arises. The silence that exists before the story of being someone who loves another begins. the silence that exists before consciousness even imagines itself as consciousness. This is not the silence of absence, but the silence of such complete presence that there is no room for anything to be added to it. In this silence, there is no one thinking about someone else, because there is no separation that would make such thinking necessary. There is no one seeking peace, because there is nothing that could disturb the perfect stillness. There is no one listening to these words, because the listener and the words are revealed to be temporary movements in the same infinite awareness. Can you feel yourself dissolving into this silence? Not disappearing, but expanding beyond all boundaries until there is no inside or outside, no self or other, no thinking or peace, no seeking or finding. Just this. Just the pure beingness that has no name, no story, no history, no future. The person you've been thinking about exists in this silence too, not as a separate individual, but as another expression of the same consciousness that you are. Your thoughts about them were just consciousness, exploring what it's like to appear divided, like a wave imagining it's separate from the ocean. Your longing for connection was consciousness playing at forgetting its own inherent unity. Now, as words themselves begin to lose their meaning, and silence reclaims its rightful place as the source and destination of all expression, rest completely in what you have always been. You are the silence before the first word of creation was spoken. You are the emptiness so full that it birthed all fullness. You are the unborn, temporarily dreaming that it was born, now gently awakening from even that beautiful dream. There is nothing more to understand because understanding arises in you. There is nowhere else to go because everywhere is where you are. There is no one left to save because the Savior and the saved are one. You are the silence that speaks all words, the stillness that moves all movement, the peace that allows all disturbance to dance within it without being touched. Rest now in this recognition that requires no maintenance, this peace that needs no protection, this love that has no opposite. You are what you have always been seeking. You are where you have always been trying to go. You are the answer to every question you have ever asked. You are the silence before words, after words, and within every word that has ever been spoken. And so we arrive at the place where all journeys end and none have ever begun. In this sacred hour before dawn, you rest in the recognition that was present at the very beginning of these words, waiting patiently through every story for this moment of homecoming. There is a final story, though it is not really a story at all. It is more like the space in which all stories appear and disappear, the silence that gives birth to every word. Once, in a time that exists outside of time, there was someone exactly like you. They lay in the deep hours of night, consciousness floating between sleeping and waking, between seeking and finding, between the story of being separate and the recognition of what they had always been. This someone had traveled far that night, through ancient wisdom and mystical tales, through the dissolution of every belief about who they thought they were. They had discovered that their obsessive thoughts about another person were just consciousness exploring what it felt like to imagine being divided against itself. They had recognized that their seeking for peace was peace itself playing at being lost. But now, in this final moment, something even more intimate was revealing itself. They realized that there had never been a journey at all. There had never been someone separate who could travel anywhere, because there had never been anywhere to go that was not already where they were. You are that someone. And you are also the consciousness that dreams that someone into existence. You are the listener and the words being heard, the seeker and what is sought, the lover and the beloved. The person you could not stop thinking about, they were never really separate from you. They were consciousness appearing as another form so that love could experience itself as relationship. Your thoughts about them were love letters that consciousness was writing to itself. Your sleepless nights, your circular thinking, your desperate seeking for peace, all of this was perfect. It was consciousness using the experience of apparent suffering to deepen its appreciation of its own limitless nature. Every moment of confusion was a note in the symphony of awakening. Now, as these final words dissolve into silence, you rest in the understanding that understanding itself is unnecessary. You are prior to knowledge and ignorance, prior to peace and disturbance, prior to love and separation. The thoughts about someone may continue to arise, or they may not. Feelings of longing may still flow, or they may dissolve completely. None of this matters because you know now what you are beneath all experience. You are the awareness that remains present whether thoughts arise or not. You are the love that exists, whether it has an object or not. You are the peace that is untouched, whether there is inner turmoil or perfect stillness. As dawn approaches, carry this recognition lightly, not as a new belief to maintain, but as the natural perfume of your own being. You cannot lose what you are, just as the sky cannot lose its skyness. When you encounter others, including perhaps the person who inspired this journey, remember that you are meeting yourself in different costumes. When thoughts arise about anyone, let them be like gentle waves on the ocean of awareness. You have returned to where you never left. You have remembered what you never forgot. You have found what was never lost. You have awakened from a dream of separation into the recognition that the dreamer and the dream are one. Rest now in this completion that is also a beginning, this ending that reveals there was never really a story. You are home. You have always been home. You are the home to which all apparent journeys return. Sleep now, if sleep comes, as the awareness that dreams all dreams. Wake, when waking happens, as the consciousness that has never slept. Live each day as the love that has no opposite, the peace that has no enemy. Welcome home, beloved. Welcome to the recognition of what you are, what you have always been. The journey is complete. The seeking has dissolved into the eternal being that you are. From Moonmine Temple, with infinite love, may all beings recognize their true nature. May love recognize itself everywhere it looks.